And in order to support that, there's a post that you have to walk around on the end of your peninsula in order to go. But yours is open concept and mine's not. You're a snob.
Open, but not everybody can see my dirty dishes.
Welcome to Real Siblings, It Ain't Easy, a real estate podcast with the goal to educate, inform, and save their listeners time as they navigate the market and properties in their neighborhoods. Get ready to join real-life siblings and professional real estate advisors, Donna Reed and Eric Seemann, as they discuss how it may be simple, but it ain't always easy.
Every time I think about the places I have known, I realize that times have changed. So I'll do what I can to make this house into a home. Yeah, yeah. Oh.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Real Siblings, It Ain't Easy, a real estate podcast that is altogether unconventional, unique, unusual, and seriously, it just ain't typical. Why? We'll cover that in another episode. I'm Eric, she's Donna, and we are those real siblings. We're both professional real estate agents. Was that a bad teaser for a future episode?
What are you doing in this intro, brother? Okay, go for it.
We both work with Keller Williams. Donna's in Tucson with Keller Williams Southern Arizona. I'm in San Antonio with Keller Williams Heritage. And right now, we're getting ready to start our next episode, and it's up to you to decide what we're talking about.
Up to me? Up to them?
Up to you. Up to me. Right.
Okay. Are you throwing this to me now, brother? Am I supposed to pick it up for me?
Sure, why not?
Okay. So for those of you that watch the podcast, which I say in air quotes since podcasts aren't supposed to be videos, but we record this right on Zoom. So Eric and I always have a picture behind us and are talking about it. And today, if you're watching, you're probably thinking, what do they have in common? Except that they are the inside of a house. So mine looks very different than the one that Eric is moving around in front of right now, sliding from side to side. Eric, tell everybody what's behind you and what we're going to talk about today.
I have a big open concept empty house. And open concept is the topic for the day, and high ceilings, whatever the heck that means.
Right.
So I specifically looked for a photo that showed how empty an open concept room, living, dining, kitchen-y area can be as it flows together. And then you have to kind of set your furniture to create those zones within it.
Yeah.
And mine also has a little bit of a pitched ceiling, but let's talk open space. Yours, on the other hand.
Yeah, mine, on the other hand, was actually a patio room at one time. And if you look at it, you can see how thick the beam is in the middle, which was the exterior at one point. Very common in Tucson are these high ceilings that had the beams exposed. So this is a very typical mid-century that's been added on to, where they kept the look and the feel. And it's a massive room. You can only see part of it, but it's a huge room with a vaulted ceiling, I guess. And you and I already talked, we have highs in Tucson. In the MLS, we have above 9 feet. It's a high ceiling. We have vaulted ceiling and we have cathedral ceiling. And I have to tell you, every time I input a listing, so it's peaked, it's tall, it's more than 9 feet.
So what makes it a cathedral? Do you ever list anything as being a cathedral ceiling?
Yes, and those tend to be ones that are maybe like a whole 2 stories that are exposed over the living or dining area, and then it'll be shorter in the kitchen or something like that.
Okay, I have to ask then: are those that are cathedral ceiling, are those really, really newer builds? Because the only cathedral ceilings that I can think of, if that's what we're on, are new builds in high-end luxury communities that are raising the roof so the walls are at least 12 to 14 feet, and then you've got a big pitch up on top of that to create that.
Oh yeah, some of them are 20 feet, and like I would never change a chandelier, or 24 feet. They go all the way up to the top of what would be the second story in part of the house. That is not the case here. And Eric, you and I didn't talk about this, but we come from a tall family. So with the average height in our family being 6 feet tall, not that any of my brothers married women that height, but just saying, for us, if I walk into a 1950s, a mid-century, or a flat-roofed one that hasn't been raised, it can feel cramped to me just because of being taller, So do you notice that?
Yes. No question about it. I don't know what a high ceiling is, because in our multiple listing service, or MLS, it's open concept and high ceilings. There's no differentiation to say that's more than 9 feet.
Okay.
Anything along those lines. You walk in going, is it or is it not? And I guess my measurement device would be typically with whatever your height are. If you raise your arm up over your head, you're adding about 2 feet.
For me, about 8 then, right?
Right. We're both getting close to 8 feet. If you put your arm up and you're banging into a ceiling fan or coming close to the ceiling, that's not a high ceiling. But is a foot higher?
That's where we hit the 9 feet. So let me ask you, because looking at the one that you're sitting in and thinking about where you live, you have your peak down the middle, right? The same as this.
Yes.
How high are the ceilings in your place, do you think?
About 12 feet at the maximum. Okay. So right like in the picture above my head, if that was 12 feet.
So scoot back over to your left a little bit and cover up that doorway there. Okay. So looking at this picture, you guys, as we talk about open concept, Eric and I had discussions about, well, was this house open concept? Was that? So in this image, you see the kitchen down at the end, the sink must have a window to the left, and then French doors, looks like, to the outside. That light that's dangling behind you probably is intended to be over a dining table.
Yes, I would think so. That's going to be the dining zone.
And so then towards us, like in the image,
is where the couch is going to be, and a TV kind of along that, mounted on that wall.
Right.
And there's no built-ins or anything like that.
Somebody might add an island down there, a movable one or something. But the way this image is, it looks like I could go bowling in there. I don't know how long it is, or how long the house is. It's big. And it's long and it's open. It's big, it's long, it's open. And I'm not entirely a big fan of big open spaces. When I go out with buyers, especially if we're looking at new builds, which a lot of your new builds are just like what I've got pictured behind me, vacant. It is builder neutral, builder basic, and you've got some sort of white cabinet, you've got some sort of off-shade white walls, you don't even use the gray neutral that flippers are using. It's still some sort of cream white or something along those lines. And just like in some of your HGTV shows, the house shoppers, they give it a nickname. I have a checklist with buyers, and it's like, look, if we're going out and that's what we're doing, we can't look at any more than 4, because I guarantee you're not going to remember the difference between house 1 and house number 4, because they're going to be so similar. Almost all of the builders in that category are putting in some sort of very basic granite, what I refer to as kind of like a salt and pepper granite. It's going to have white cabinets, and it's going to have some sort of an island, whether that's positioned a little bit off to the side or, as the one pictured behind me, just kind of flows straight into it. That's what you're going to have. And by the time you go into the 4th one, it's like, okay, so it kind of had that neutral gray floor, and it had the white cabinets. And how do you differentiate? Yours, at least the one you have pictured behind you, because it's that conversion and upgrade, has, while it's open, it stylistically doesn't say, oh, this is just like every other house that they built. And this is a higher end home, over $1 million here in town. So this is a piece of what is a higher end kind of old school Tucson home as compared to something that's brand new.
Okay. Is that one of your listings for something a buyer you had?
And it's on the market right now. Yeah.
Okay. How big is that converted
porch that
opened it up?
There's another whole side to that on the other side of the piano. I would say probably 24 by 20 or something, maybe even bigger. We're actually getting a floor plan done on Wednesday.
Okay. And as you're sitting there
Yeah.
in the room with the living space behind you and the grand piano behind you,
you're actually, this particular addition, there's 2 steps up into what would be then the living and kitchen. So this is the family area. And opposite the windows that you can see here on the other side are the windows that open to the outside all the way across the back.
Yeah, I'm that guy, though, I can tell you, because of growing up in the older houses. And I think, if anybody who's listened to this before knows I kind of have a passion for the older houses, not only the old houses that we grew up in, but the fact that style-wise, they just was something. And to go in some of these folk Victorians or something along those lines that now has been converted to a modern day open concept. They opened up and got rid of at least 2 walls to create this big open pattern. It's a crime against architecture as far as I'm concerned. Because then it's going to be some sort of cool gray, something along those lines, and just anything that had character distinction. And when I can go back and I can find the previous listing on those, so if I see something and I go, oh, I wonder what that looked like, and then you find out that they had some really, really cool built-ins differentiating the area and maybe a little bit of a angled column or something like that, and all of that is gone. It's like, what the heck?
What were the words that you just used related to the Victorian? Because whatever you said reminded me of the fact that you have so much German influence. Folk Victorian. I don't know if I've ever used that here because that's not a style we have here. But remember up at the ranch in Wickenburg, they had that folk / Mexico / Southwest.
Yeah, and you had something. Territorial.
The territorial style,
which would be, I think, similar from what we were talking in some of the design concepts.
On the windowsills and some things like that, maybe. Yeah. But I can picture the color in the ones that you guys have in the areas where there's more of the German influence there, and so they're Texas homes, but with that. And that older home, but with that little bit of.
Okay. And this is one of those things that it's, while it's convenient if you're entertaining an open concept home, you're going to have people in, think a holiday meal, think some sort of party, birthday gathering, something like that seems really convenient. Then there's the flip side of it. If one of the 2 partners in the house like a certain type of television event that the other one doesn't appreciate, where do you go? All right, now you go sit in your bedroom. And I'm sorry, many, many bedrooms, especially in a newer house, have room for the bed, have room for the dresser, have a huge walk-in closet, will have some sort of ensuite. Primary bedroom is what I'm thinking about. But does it have room to have an extra chair to sit in and read? Or are you going to have to flop on the bed? Which was fine when you're young. But is it something you want to do to try to wedge a slouchy pillow and twist your back and all those other things as we become more seasoned in age?
Is that like a fine wine or one where the lid was left off?
Yeah, no, that's a fine wine. Fine. All right. Now, you did say, as we were preparing for this, we were talking about our houses in Lindsey, the 2 houses, one on Main Street, which we found was built at least in 1924, if not a little bit older.
Yeah.
I know. But look, the county can't lie to us, right? No. And the other one built in 1868. And I don't feel like either one of those had a typical room setup that you might think of houses in those age. Because of how big our living room was on Main Street, it was in the front door. You had one big room that went to the left and to the right. Went to the right, it went through that archway into the dining room and out into the kitchen. But we agreed, discussed, is that really an open concept? And from your standpoint, the answer is no, because
the kitchen was not part of it. And to me, the open concept is used specifically, and I don't know if it's true or not, this is just my interpretation, where the kitchen where the dining, where the living come together. And in that home, even though that living room was really big, and you and I discussed whether it was ever 2 rooms, I could do 3 or 4 cartwheels across the front of the house. And even though that was the case, and then there was a big arch into the dining, but smaller into the kitchen, and the kitchen was very separate back there. So to me, that's not an open concept, because if mom was in the kitchen cooking and we ate in that little nook in the kitchen, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. In the little nook on Main Street.
The dining room was only used at the holidays, and I can barely remember furniture on both sides of the big front room, but to me, that's not open concept. And you and I then talked about your house and my house right now. So.
Right. And I feel like my house, one of the things that originally attracted me to my house when we went to the model was the fact that I have across one side, which I consider to be the back of my house, 2 sets of doors. They were both originally sliding doors. One is now French doors. The other one is still the slider. Both of those open onto our patio, which connects by a bridge. However, if I stood at that door that was in the kitchen behind the dining room table, I could see the front door, and I could see all the way through to the second living space and the fireplace in one big room. So from my standpoint, that was open concept. I'm standing in the kitchen. I could talk to people. They could hang around the island. They sit at the dining table. They could be in the living room. But you're saying because the way it, from your standpoint, it was not.
And you know what's really funny about that? So I'm thinking of where your pantry is and where you keep the dog food and stuff like that. And then the way that your peninsula comes out from the kitchen, the pass-through area there is not really very wide, right? I mean, if it's me.
No. There is a junction that it's like, this is where, when you're traversing the house, everybody goes through this one.
So whereas like section. In the one that you're in front of, the furniture is going to create that. There's no walls creating any of that. It's all going to be done by how you place your furniture and the way that you want your traffic flow to be. So in your place, now in mine, it's funny because I think it's an open concept, but I don't, unless I jump the countertop, I have to walk around and go in.
Right. Sorry, I know we just lost a person of distinction in the United States. O.J. Simpson back in the 70s would have leapt over that when he was doing a Hertz commercial. And
no, I'm not.
You're not
no
doing that now.
Taking place.
No leaping. There's gently walking around the peninsula, and because of how high your ceilings are, how high is your? How high
after I put in the antique that I brought back from Lindsey, so what's regular countertop size is what 336 or something like that. There, and then that piece up above is 8 to 9 feet, so 12 to 13 feet tall, and it is in.
Okay, and in order to support that, there's a post that you have to walk around on the end of your peninsula in order to go. But yours is open concept and mine's not. You're a snob.
Open, but not everybody can see my dirty dishes. I'm literally looking right now, you guys. Like, can you see my dirty dishes? No, you can't, because that's not even my kitchen. But I like that I can use this butcher block peninsula. And I've had a lot of parties here, and I do, a buffet on there, and people can be on either side of it. Some people will come into the kitchen easily if there's something on the stove. But then it's dining, living. That's it, and what we don't have is what the home behind me in this picture has, is 2 separate spaces to go. So think about the one on Lynn Street. How if we were together with people, there could be the dining table, the bay window living room area, the library/TV room. We could really divide up and have separate conversations because of that. And that would never happen in that house that you're sitting, that's in the picture behind you now. So.
Right. And then we talk about the 1868 house.
That's the one I was talking about just now.
And how it was not really structured like a house you would think at that age. I watch a lot of restoration shows where there are walls that they tear down, and even the interior walls are brick. You go back and listen to our bricks and limestone episode. We talk about the fact that our brick house was a true brick house. It was an open air space in it between interior brick and exterior brick. But there were no walls when Dad did all the renovation in 1972 before we moved in, that he had to tear out brick walls. And you had you had a living area off of Lynn Street. You had through the wood columns that went into a second living space. Then around the corner to a den, or what may have been the receiving room if they came in off of Maple Street. There was a big open archway area that went into the dining room area. None of it was really, but because of the age that it was built, the kitchen was an afterthought. I think the kitchen came later in time with those two doors that were, the archway into the dining room, the archway into the living room where the wood stove was at. That was some sort of back porch area.
We should go to our Retro Lindsey Facebook page and see if there's any Millers, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren.
Well, Daryl Nip was a Miller. He check with Daryl.
Oh, because somebody in his family. Daryl was never a Miller, but the family was. Yeah. Yes, somebody in town was. Yeah, it'd be really interesting to know what that home looked like before that big kitchen and bathroom were there, right? Yeah. Huh.
Okay, and now Walnut Street. Walnut Street, your house on Walnut Street is the one that feels to me the most typical for a house of its age. Separate little kitchen space through a doorway out to a living room, through another doorway up to the stairs. Everything was very compartmentalized.
And our dining room was kind of far from the kitchen. If you think about the fact that you had to walk through the living room to get there.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And what about Fremont?
What street?
Miller Street.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Miller?
Yeah, Miller Street,
What
the one
was
where
the
we
street
couldn't remember that Stamm High School was right there. That Stamm School was there. That one had like the mud room, and we had a basement downstairs, and you walked into the kitchen and then into the living room. Boy, this is really racking my brain to think about this. That was a reasonably good sized room. I can picture the carpet. I can picture the stairway up. I don't know where we ate.
But you had that as a finished basement. And we're going to have to do a basement episode because I've thought about our cousin's place in Bristolville. That was the most amazing basement. That was a basement that was designed to be full-on living space. I think even more so than what like Uncle Bob and Aunt Dude's place was in Deerfield, which was down a set of stairs, but it felt more livable because of the turns and the twists and the setup of it.
They had the separate entrance from the outside. You know what? We should get Doug on here as a guest, and have him talk about that house because he's lived now in that town his whole life. And I wonder how many homes there had that, kind of.
Have that kind of, that you could walk out the back end of it too. And